Hi, when you're stamping, there's lots of different inks to choose from. So let's talk a little bit about what some of your options are and when you should use some versus others. So we're going to start up here at the top, and the first type we have is what's called a dye ink. Now, dye inks are fast drying, they're water-based, and they are great for getting detail. Because they dry quickly, you don't want to use them with embossing, but you do want to use them with designs that you're trying to get multiple colors with maybe. They absorb into the paper, and that's part of the fast drying part. And there's lots and lots of different dye inks. That's probably the most common ink you're going to find. The next one is the pigment ink. Okay, and pigment inks also come in a variety of colors. This one happens to just be white. But a pigment ink, instead of absorbing into the paper, sits on top of the paper, so it's slow drying and it's very wet. It's perfect for embossing and for things that maybe are not as porous. It does take them a while to dry, so if you're working on a project that you need to have it dry quickly, you may need to heat set it or emboss it if you want to have it dry quickly. Now, in between those two, we also have distress inks, which are a dye ink, but they are a wetter dye ink. And so they're perfect for aging, distressing, things like that. You can stamp with them. Sometimes they will pool up on your stamps, and if they do, try stamping with Versamark ink and then using your distress inks to see if that helps get a smoother coating. But there's lots of colors of those distress inks. Then we have hybrid inks. Hybrid inks are a combination of dye and pigment ink as well, but they dry faster than pigment inks, but they are also less likely to bleed like a dye ink will, because a dye ink is water-based. It does bleed when it gets with water. So you want to be careful when you're using dye inks, but the hybrid inks do not bleed as much. Okay, then we have our chalk inks. This is a specialty ink that was designed to give kind of a soft effect when it's stamped with. It's great for working on dark papers because it will really stand out. When you're using it on white papers, you may not notice a difference in it between some of your other colors, but it does have a little bit softer effect. Then we have our Versamark, or what we call embossing or clear inks. These are ones that you can use for tone-on-tone projects. You can use them for embossing where you want to add additional embossing powders to it. You can either use clear or you can use colored embossing powders. There are some embossing ink pads out there that actually have a little bit of tint to them, a blue or pink, so you can see it on your project. But keep in mind, if you need a true clear, then you want to use a clear ink pad when you're doing embossing. Our last one is StazOn. StazOn is a solvent ink. It is designed for being on non-porous surfaces. It takes a while it's quick drying, but you can use it on things like glass, wood, any slick surfaces, metal, things like that. So it's really fun to use on some of your home decor projects. Now, we have all these different ones. We also have spray inks. Spray inks come in a liquid format, and they either are just inks like this one, or they are glimmer ones that have a little bit of a sparkle to them. They both do the same types of things as far as you're going to spritz with them. You can paint with them if you make little puddles, but it's just a different format for getting your inks onto your projects. When you're working with your ink pads, if you're finding that they're getting dry, you can re-ink your ink pads. This is one for the distress ink. It comes with a little stopper, so all you do is squeeze it up and you take off your lid of your ink pad, and you're just going to drip it onto your ink pad and then let it sit for a while to kind of soak in. So there are re-inkers out there. That sometimes is cheaper than going out and buying a new ink pad. If your ink pad's really destroyed, you may want to just think about getting a whole new ink pad. There are also, you'll notice, different shapes. We've got squares, rectangles, ovals. Another one you may see are cat eyes, where they're in the shape of a cat eye. You want to buy the size that's going to work best for the stamp you're working with. For example, if you had a full background stamp, covering that with a cat eye is going to take a lot of time, and you may actually find that your cat eye ink pad wiggles quite a bit. So think about the project you're using as far as the size of the ink pad you're going to use, but there is no difference between the different sizes as far as how the ink functions. We just want to keep in mind, is it dye, pigment, that type of thing. Also, if you find that you can't get something to dry quickly, heat set it. If it's drying too fast, move to a pigment ink. So there's lots of different options as far as what you can do with your different inks. Keep in mind the project you're going to be working on, the techniques you're going to be using, and decide which ink you need based on those items. Have fun creating.